Hello, class, and welcome to Stardom 101, an online course that untangles the various mechanisms that animate fame, celebrity, and stardom. I'm your instructor for today, Casey Legacion, and in our first lecture, we will talk about stars. What are they, and what do they do exactly? But first, an introduction. Who am I, and why should you listen to what I have to say about stardom? Well, like many of us, I am someone who grew up socialized and encultured by Hollywood, meaning that I have been taught to romanticize and idealize fame for most of my life. And like some of us, I am a trained actor, someone who has been taught to enter Hollywood, someone primed for fame competition. And I have also spent the past 3+ years seriously studying fame by researching and building upon the academic scholarship, journalism, cultural criticism, and online discourse surrounding stardom. The fruit of my labor thus far is my ongoing Substack, Stellar Mechanics, where I synthesize the various insights I'm gleaning on stardom into analytical essays. I've mostly been building my theoretical framework so far, but I've recently released my very first case study on cat's eye. And in an effort to increase my audience and further build my own star, I'm adapting these essays into video lectures. Thus, Stardom 101. With that out of the way, grab your note taking tools, a bevy, and a snack, and let's begin. We'll start by answering this first question. What are stars? Well, in everyday conversation, people generally conflate the concept of a star with a person. To be famous, to be a celebrity, is to be a star. As Britney so iconically sings, she's so lucky, she's a star, but quack, quack, quack. But film scholar Richard Dyer offers more expansive ways of defining stars in his influential books, Stars and Heavenly Bodies, in which he analyzes film icons from the studio system era of Hollywood. For Dyer, stars can be defined simply as, quote, images in media texts, end quote. And yes, we are in the realm of semiotics now. Let's break this definition down, starting with images. When Dyer writes that stars are images, he does not mean that a star is, quote, an exclusively visual sign, end quote, something that can only be perceived through the sense of sight. Instead, Dyer uses the word image to refer to, quote, a complex configuration of visual, verbal, and oral signs, end quote. Things that can be perceived through sight, yes, and also language and sound, taste, smell, the full multiplicity of our senses. And when he writes media texts, he's referring to things that are communicated and interpreted, things that are packed into messages, sent out, opened, and read. Dyer elaborates on his definition of a star with this quote. A film star's image is not just their films, but the promotion of those films, and of the star through pinups, public appearances, studio handouts, and so on, as well as interviews, biographies, and coverage in the press of the star's doings and private life. Further, a star's image is also what people say or write about them as critics or commentators, the way the image is used in other contexts such as advertisements, novels, pop songs, and finally, the way the star can become part of the coinage of everyday speech. Star images are always extensive, multimedia, intertextual. With this in mind, here is a definition I'll offer. A star is the multimedia amalgamation of stuff about a famous person that exists in our collective consciousness. At the center of the assemblage that is a star, of course, lies a literal human, weighed beyond the glamorous pictures of 21st century A-lister Zendaya, and we can find Zendaya Coleman, a fellow 96 zillennial from the Bay Area. Ooh. Thus, the common conflation of star as image and star as person. But Dyer himself makes explicit distinctions between his analysis of a celebrity, in which he uses the word star, and his analysis of the semiotic assemblage swirling around a celebrity, in which he uses the term star image. We can see this analytical separation here in this block quote. A star's image versus star images. A famous person versus their fame itself. Echoes of this discursive move, the naming of a person's fame as separate from themselves, ripple throughout contemporary culture. Last year alone featured several instances of people describing a celebrity's fame as a star they possess. Club pop icon Charlie XCX, in her song So I, a tribute to the late artist Sophie, sings of the latter's legacy, quote, "Your star burns so bright," end quote, and rest in peace, Sophie. Cultural critic Sashi Cole, in the Nickelodeon expose docuseries Quiet on Set, describes the star trajectory of a now infamous and very harmful children's television producer. Quote, "Over the 90s, Dan's star is rising in Nickelodeon," end quote. And Vogue editor Marlee Marius, in her cover story on Zendaya for the May 2024 edition, ends the feature with a provocative question. Quote, "Now that her star is shining more brightly than ever, how will she use its light?" End quote. What? Oh, right. This is a simple linguistic step, going from being a star to having a star, but I think the conceptual separation between a famous person and their fame opens up expansive theoretical space, within which we can better understand the inner workings of stardom with greater analytical clarity. Let's dig deeper. To start here, I'll offer another definition. A star is the aggregate amount of shared attention and memory dedicated to a particular person, or even place and thing. Stars are connected to things. If stars are tethered to widely known things, then we can say that celebrities do not function as stars, but rather as anchors of stars. Star anchors, if you will. The literal humans with finite lifespans who can experience the same gamut of emotions as you and me. The physical people who eat and drink and burp and fart and live and die. As anchors, famous people act as gravitational centers for grand sums of collective consciousness that can sometimes live on for thousands of years after the anchor's physical deaths. Alexander the Great, as anchor, is long dead, but his star continues to shine to this day, in small part thanks to my mere act of mentioning his name. This distinction between star and star anchor has a lot of conceptual utility. For instance, it can help us better articulate a perennial tension when talking about celebrities. The fact that they are just like us, yet also not because they live in their own bubble of fame. Dyer calls this the ordinary special dialectic. With the language of star anchor and star, we can then distinguish the ordinary parts of stardom, the anchor, the literal human, dead or alive, from the special parts, the star connected to the anchor, the tens of thousands of screaming fans in stadiums, the hundreds of millions of followers on Instagram, the billions and billions of streams on Spotify. If we make this clarification, then we can understand that, yes, anchors are like us in the sense that they are also mortal human beings, meaning that we should generally try to extend to them the same amount of grace that we extend to the mortal human beings in our everyday lives. And yes, anchors are not like us in the sense that many of their actions operate within a place of intense concentration. Concentrated attention, wealth, cultural sway, political power. And this position of concentration places upon anchors greater levels of scrutiny and expectation. So, what are stars? In summary, stars can be thought of as the continuously evolving masses of information that revolve around famous people. Stars are amalgams of signs and symbols about a person, place, or thing that are widely shared and interpreted. Anchored to well-known things and floating around in the ether that is collective consciousness, or the semiosphere if you want to get esoteric. Stars are conglomerations of cultural memory, ceaselessly shared and reinterpreted until they are forgotten forever. Well, that's all fine and dandy. Let's answer a second question now. What do stars do? To answer this, I'll first introduce the concept of affordance. As a concept, affordance finds origins in 1979 with ecological psychologist James J. Gibson, who describes the word as a relational term that speaks to the possible interactions between an organism and its environment. For Gibson, quote, "Affordances of the environment are what it offers the animal, what it provides or furnishes, either for good or ill," end quote. In other words, affordance gives us language to verbalize the kinds of actions that are available to a creature given its own circumstances and the setup of its surroundings. Think of a floating log, which affords to a semi-aquatic turtle a spot to rest and sunbathe. Because this hypothetical turtle can swim and is lighter than the hypothetical log, the turtle can venture through its pond, climb atop the floating wood, and bask in the sun. The animal is able to experience a specific experience, embody a specific affordance, because of the relationship between its own abilities and the opportunities of its surrounding context. The concept of affordance can be extended from an environment to an object. And by object, I mean anything that can be perceived. A log in a pond, a picture on a screen, a song on the radio, all are objects that are capable of furnishing actors with specific action possibilities. The hypothetical picture might be a map, which can equip the hypothetical screen viewer with the know how to reach a specific destination. The hypothetical song might be a party anthem, which can instill within the hypothetical listener feelings of excitement, revelry, and confidence. Gibson further emphasizes that animals, including people themselves, are objects that afford things to other actors, writing that, quote, the other animal and the other person provide mutual and reciprocal affordances at extremely high levels of behavioral complexity. At the highest level, when vocalizations become speech and manufactured displays become images, pictures, and writing, the affordances of human behavior are staggering. End quote. So, what do stars afford? Well, at a fundamental level, to all of us, stars afford archetypal patterns of behavior. As concentrated forms of collective consciousness congregating around particular sets of images and ideas, stars provide examples that equip us with templates for thought, feeling, and embodiment. As Gibson writes, quote, sexual behavior, nurturing behavior, fighting behavior, cooperative behavior, economic behavior, political behavior, all depend on the perceiving of what another person or other persons afford, or sometimes on the misperceiving of it, end quote. Replace persons with stars in this quote, and we can better understand that stars are informatic objects that enable and constrain behaviors. Here, I also want to emphasize especially the words perceiving and misperceiving. This points to the contextual and relational nature of affordances. Let's go back to our hypothetical turtle, who could only float on the hypothetical log because of its swimming ability and small size. If I tried sunbathing on that log, however, I'd likely sink it and get all wet, given my much larger size and weight. Similarly, one anchor's star can afford to me very different things in comparison to someone else, given our different worldviews, life experiences, and relationships with this hypothetical anchor's star. To speak broadly of a star's affordance, stars reflect and redefine their contextual milieus, worldviews, and lifeways. They set the pace and tone of any given moment in spacetime, and put simply, stars are tools for collective organization. Even more directly, here's a non-exhaustive list of Stardom's affordances. Stars make people money. They create belonging. They impassion people, engender obsession, magnify toxicity. They direct culture and embody zeitgeists. They provide hope, inspiration, comfort, escapism, and pride. And they scratch the itch for self-expression, recognition, praise, glory, and self-fulfillment. They facilitate social regulation and cohesion by constructing character norms and social expectations, and they enable mass disruption and radical transformation by releasing stagnation and redirecting spirals of consciousness. They shape collective action, ideology, axiology. They forge the transmission of cultural memory, and they also forge spiritual connections. Under their contemporary matrix of domination, or the interlocking systems of oppression that shape our realities, stars are most often exploited and used to aggregate wealth and power, thus reproducing unequal and harmful patterns of distribution. But such a critique of capitalistic forms of stardom is well established. Ultimately, stars are powerful semiotic objects that carry with them a complex and contradictory array of affordances. In any case, they afford the ability to touch the most intimate and visceral aspects of our collective consciousness. They have the capability to bring about fundamental and profound transformation. I know that might seem like a grandiose statement. We're just talking about celebrities after all, but if you made it this far in the video, then chances are you know full well the immensity and gravity of affect that accompanies stardom. And this is not something to consider lightly, especially in our contemporary moment, one fraught with harm, oppression, and violence. Rather, the transcendent profundity of stardom is something to analyze with clarity and purpose, so we may better understand how stardom can operate in alignment with the liberatory waves working towards restorative and reparative ways of existence. Put simply, shit's crazy right now. So how can stars make this crazy the good kind of crazy? Answering such a question is one of the core motives behind this project. So if that resonates with you, be sure to come back for our next lecture where we'll wade even deeper into the theoretical waters of stardom by introducing the fundamental model behind my analytical framework, the star pyramid. Ooh. Wow. But that's all I have for now. Thank you for sticking around. If you did, maybe drop me a snail emoji in the comments to let me know that you watched this far. And if you're interested in studying ahead in our class, you can check out all of my published essays at Stellar Mechanics on Substack. And you can follow me at Casey Snails on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube to get the latest lecture once they're released. Here's my little bibliography. And thank you again. Wishing you all peace and acceptance. Praise practice.